can win in today's economy. Now, that is a bit of a summary of a much larger issue. Steve Siebold is on set here to talk to us. There's Steve right there, mental toughness expert and author of How Rich People Think. He's written a lot of books. He's worldwide. He also, in 1984, was broke, as I understand it, Steve. And
Yes.
you have turned that into a multi-million-dollar success story. Congratulations. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ellis.
Well, thanks a lot for being here, because I think that this is one of those topics, and we try to, create topics for the show that aren't just important because we think they're important, but because hopefully people out there consider them important. That's why they watch, and maybe they get something out of it. And I thought this was a perfect example of that. I mentioned that you were down, you turned it into something that has become quite successful. You are a mental toughness expert. Never heard of that. I know you have a professional sports background in tennis and so forth. How does one become a mental toughness expert, and what does that mean?
Well, I was a professional tennis player back in the 80s, and I was my goal was to be top 50 in the world. I only made it to the top 500, and I wanted to know why. I knew the difference was mental, so I became sort of obsessed with studying the topic, and that's all I did. I mean, that's all I did all through college, and I kind of figured it out, but by the time I did, I was too old to go back to tennis, so started coaching athletes and professional athletes, amateur athletes, and mental toughness, and then went on to companies.
And what are some of the keys just generally to be successful, or at least to make some progress in mental toughness? I want to get to your story here and Rich People Think and how they do and how that compares maybe to most people in the middle class. We'll do that momentarily, but just as a basic principle or two, what can people take out of our conversation when it comes to being mentally tough?
Well, I think one thing is focus. You've got to have incredible focus. To have the higher level focus you have, the more mentally tough you're going to be. You've got to decide that you're going to be persistent. You're going to hang in there and do whatever it takes. And the basic success principles, as we all have learned over the years, really apply in mental toughness.
Okay, now one thing that jumped out at me was I would take what you just said, and I could wrap my brain around that. I mean, that was not something that was so complicated that I'm left with open mouth. I get it. But when I read what your message is, it doesn't translate to what I think it would. And here's what I mean. You said being determined, being focused, do hard work. And yet, you go, I believe, into the belief that that's not enough to be successful in terms of being rich or not. That this working hard isn't the way to necessarily look at it. It's more of a thinking game. It's more of a leverage game. Is that a fair assessment, or what does that mean?
Definitely. It's a different kind of hard work, I think. It's thinking. I think that the rich are masters at leveraging their thought processes.
What does that mean?
Well, for the most part, I think it means that they're not operating out of fear. Like most of us are terrified about money, especially with the economy. Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to lose my house? I mean, my God, what if we run out of money? What are the, all those fears. And right now, the wealthy aren't doing that. The wealthy are thinking, how can I capitalize on this new economy, this new set of opportunities that's really unprecedented?
Isn't it also good, though, even if you've not yet, reached the point, like most of us haven't, where you're rich, where you could look at a loss of a job, you could look at the economy, and you could look at it as an opportunity, and you could go with that. And if you focus on that approach, that's part of the battle, is it not?
Absolutely. Mort Zuckerman, I don't know if you saw this, Ellis, but Mort Zuckerman wrote an article in Wall Street Journal today called "The End of Optimism in America." And I love Mort Zuckerman, but I couldn't disagree more. I mean, this is a time of unbelievable opportunity, and I don't mean that out of positive thinking. I mean it out of critical thinking. I mean, there's all these new problems to solve, and a lot of people are going to get rich getting paid to solve them.
And they're not just cultural, societal problems, which there are abundance of, but there are a lot of individual examples because, again, of the recession, the economy, the job loss, the unemployment numbers, and so forth. We all know what they are. But you're suggesting that even despite all that, you could still win.
Absolutely. I mean, people that are out there thinking, in the middle class, let's say, they're struggling, they're thinking, I need a job. Instead of thinking, I need a job, think of how a rich person would approach making money. They would think, okay, maybe there are no jobs though in the linear world of jobs where you go, you apply, you get a job, they pay you a salary, that type of thing. But all these businesses, all these small companies and mid-sized companies need to generate revenue, and they're scared to bring people on to create more overhead. So why not approach these companies and say, you know what, give me your highest margin product and I'll sell more of it, and I'll do it for 2 weeks. And if I don't succeed, you can get rid of me. I won't get paid. And if I do, bring me on as a commission salesperson. There's so many opportunities like that.
I know personally the idea of having that fear. I know that you know that feeling of having fear, and I know there are tens of thousands of people that have that as well. But you need to somehow find that spot where you put that aside or allow it to serve as a motivator, but to not allow it to consume you. Easier said than done. Not trying to preach to anybody, but I have found that that is one big step toward getting in the right direction.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If you think like the masses, you're going to get what the masses get. And it's not a put down to the masses, but typically most people don't get what they want because they're following people who've never gotten what they wanted.
Good enough.
And it just perpetuates itself.
All right, here's the book. It's called How Rich People Think. We're going to come back and we'll talk a little bit about that. 26 years this gentleman has interviewed people who are successful, rich and otherwise, and we're going to talk to him about a half a dozen easy to understand points that separate, well, frankly, people that are rich and successful and most of us that are not. And yet Steve will also tell us how we can be successful. So we'll get to those half dozen points in our next segment.